You know, sometimes a smell, a sound, or even a simple breeze can pull you right back to a moment long gone, like a photograph tucked away in the back of a drawer. I was sitting on my porch the other evening, just rocking slow in that old chair of mine, when it hit me. This memory, stubborn as a weed, just wouldn't let go. It took me back to a summer night, some 50 years ago, when I was just a young man of 20, full of hope and a bit of reckless spirit. That night, well, it's been carrying a weight on my heart ever since. It's a story I've never shared before, not with family, not with friends, and maybe not even with myself, till now. Before I go any further, if you're finding a little comfort in this story, or if you're just curious where it's headed, I'd be much obliged if you'd hit that like button or maybe drop a comment down below. And if you want to stick around for more stories like this, well, consider subscribing. Ain't no fancy ads here, just an old man's memories and a little wisdom passed down through time. Now back to that night. The air was thick with the sweet scent of honeysuckle and the distant chirp of crickets, just like it is in that small town in South Carolina where I grew up. I remember how the sky was painted in hues of deep blue and purple, and the kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl a little, like the whole world was holding its breath. You see, that night was more than just a summer evening. It was a crossroads, a moment where fate decided to throw me a curveball I never saw coming. For years, I've carried this memory like a secret treasure chest, locked tight and tucked away. It's a story about a young man, a choice, and the strange ways life connects us to others. The thing is, I saved someone that night, but it wasn't in the way you might think, not with a cape or a badge, but with a simple act that made all the difference. The funny part is, the person I saved, well, he disappeared from my life right after, vanishing like a ghost, leaving me wondering if it was all real or just a dream. It's a tale filled with fear, hope, and the kind of friendship that's hard to explain. And even though it happened so long ago, the feelings from that night still sit heavy on my heart, as clear as the southern stars above. I reckon some stories are like that, quiet in the telling, but loud in the living. So, if you're ready, I'd like to take you on a little journey back in time, to a place where the past and present mingle, and where the smallest moment can change the course of a lifetime. This is my story, and it's one I'm ready to finally tell. When I close my eyes and drift back to those early days, it's like I can still hear the slow hum of life in that little South Carolina town where I grew up. The world moved at a different pace back then. No rush, no noise of city streets, just the gentle rhythm of church bells on Sunday morning, the creak of old wooden porches, and the laughter of neighbors greeting one another as if time itself had slowed down just for us. I was just a boy then, with bare feet and a head full of wonder, running wild through fields that stretched farther than the eye could see. We didn't have much, but what we did have was real. Family gathered round the dinner table, stories passed down over sweet tea, and a belief that tomorrow held promise. I reckon I was the kind of kid who carried a quiet hope in his chest, the kind that felt big even when the world was small. I dreamed of being more than just a boy from a dusty little town. I wanted to make a difference, though I wasn't sure quite how yet. Back then, I believed in the goodness of folks, maybe naively, but with a heart as wide as those Carolina skies. I thought kindness was the strongest kind of power, the kind that could heal and change things in ways no one else could see. And more than anything, I believed that people, no matter how far they wandered, would always find their way back to the ones who cared. Life was simple, but it wasn't always easy. My family worked hard. My pa was a farmer, hands rough from years in the sun, and my ma had a smile that could light up even the darkest days. We had our share of struggles, sure, the kind that leave you restless at night, wondering if there's more out there beyond the fields and the familiar faces. But we had each other, and that was a kind of magic all on its own. Those summer nights, with fireflies dancing and the sweet smell of jasmine filling the air, I'd lay on my back in the grass and look up at the stars, thinking about what my future might hold. By the time I was 20, I'd started to figure some things out. I'd finished school, married the sweetest woman you could imagine, and taken up teaching, helping kids learn about the world beyond our little town. But even then, the world wasn't always kind. I saw how hard life could be for folks who didn't have much, and I wanted to do something to make it better. I wanted to be someone who mattered, someone who made a difference, even if it was just in a small way. Sometimes, I thought that all a man really needed was the courage to step up when it counted, to do what was right even when no one was watching. And that's the world I lived in, the smells, the sounds, the faces of people I loved and respected. It was a place where every sunset felt like a promise, where you learned to find joy in the little things, a warm meal, a child's laugh, a friend's hand on your shoulder. I carried those days with me, tucked close to my heart, even when life grew complicated and hard. Because, you see, I believe that no matter what happens, kindness always comes back around. And I believe that some moments in life are meant to stay with you forever, shaping who you are in ways you don't always understand right away. That belief, that hope, it's what carried me through the years, and it's what brought me back to that summer night so many years ago. The night when everything changed. I remember the day like it was yesterday, though it's been many years now. The kind of day where the air feels thick, but there's something electric you can't quite put your finger on. I was walking down the main road of our little town, the sun hanging low and casting long shadows on the dusty street. You know, the kind of afternoon where everything seems ordinary, but if you look close enough, you start to notice the smallest things, the way a breeze shifts a curtain, or how a stranger's glance can linger just a bit too long. That day, out of nowhere, someone stepped into my world and changed the course of everything. His name was Charlie. Charlie wasn't from around these parts. At least, not in the way we all knew. He had that restless look in his eyes, the kind that said he'd seen more than most folks around here. I first spotted him leaning against the weathered fence outside Miller's store, watching the world go by like he was waiting for something or maybe someone. I don't rightly know what it was that caught my attention, but I'll tell you, my heart gave a little jump, and I felt that old, familiar stir of curiosity mixed with something like hope. I couldn't explain it then, not really. I just knew that this man was different, and somehow he belonged in my story. The thing about Charlie was he didn't say much at first. Quiet, maybe even a little guarded, but there was an honesty in his eyes that made you want to trust him, like he carried a truth he was just waiting to share. I found myself drawn to him, like a moth to a flame, and I guess the feeling was mutual. We started talking, slow and easy at first, about nothing and everything. He told me about his travels, the places he'd been, and the battles he'd fought, not all of them visible on the outside. It was like he carried a weight around, the kind you don't forget once you see it. I was young, 20 years old, with dreams bigger than the sky, but I'd never met anyone quite like Charlie. There was something about him that unsettled me and yet pulled me closer, like we were both searching for something just out of reach. I couldn't say why, but when he was near, my heart raced in a way I hadn't known before. I remember thinking, why does it feel like this? What is this pull that's got me all twisted up inside? It was new, it was strange, and it was powerful. Charlie wasn't just a stranger or a new friend. He was the spark that set everything in motion. The moment he showed up, my life took a turn I never expected. There was a tension in the air, a feeling like the world was about to change, and there was no turning back. That day planted a seed in my soul, one that grew quietly but fiercely, shaping the man I was becoming. It was a moment filled with promise and danger all wrapped up together, and even though I didn't fully understand it then, I felt it deep in my bones that something important was on the horizon. Looking back, I realized how much that day mattered. It wasn't just about meeting Charlie, it was about the beginning of a journey neither of us could have predicted. There was a mystery between us, an unspoken connection that neither of us dared to name, but it was there, hanging in the air like the scent of rain before a storm. And that feeling, that pull toward the unknown, is what carried me forward, even when the road got rough. That moment, that meeting, it was more than chance. It was fate weaving two lives together in a way that would change everything. And though I didn't know it then, Charlie was about to teach me some of life's hardest lessons about courage, loyalty, and what it truly means to save someone. I guess that's the funny thing about life. Sometimes the people who come into your world unannounced end up leaving the biggest mark on your heart. Life has a way of taking the best laid plans and tossing them around like autumn leaves in a storm. Not long after Charlie stepped into my world, Things started shifting in ways I didn't expect, and I wasn't ready for the weight that came with it. You see, it wasn't just the world outside that was changing inside me. There was a storm brewing, one I couldn't quiet down. The peaceful rhythm of my days got interrupted by doubts and fears I'd never had before, and for a young man like me, it felt like a heavy burden to carry alone. The first sign that things wouldn't be easy was how folks in town started whispering. You know how small places are, news travels fast and judgments travel faster. Charlie's reputation, or lack of one, raised eyebrows. Some said he was trouble, a drifter who didn't belong here. Others just didn't understand him and made their own stories. My family, especially my ma, worried for me. "Sam, be careful who you trust," she'd say, her voice soft but firm. Not everyone has good intentions, and I wanted to believe her. I did. But there was a part of me that saw past the rumors, past the sideways glances, and into Charlie's eyes, where I found something honest and broken. I wanted to stand by him, but the pressure was real, and I felt like I was caught between two worlds, one where I belonged, and one where my heart was leading me. On top of that, there was a secret I was keeping, something I couldn't share with anyone, not even the folks closest to me. That night, the one that would change everything, was weighing heavy on my mind. I'd saved a life, yes, but that act came with a cost. The fear and shame of what could have happened, the what-ifs that haunted me in quiet moments. Sometimes, I wondered if I'd done the right thing at all. Would people see me as a hero, or just someone who got lucky? And what about Charlie? Was he really the man I thought he was, or was I just fooling myself? The truth is, I was scared. Scared of losing what little I had. Scared of standing out in a place where standing out wasn't always welcome. I felt like I was walking a tightrope with no safety net, and every step was a choice between what my heart told me and what everyone else expected. It was a lonely place to be, and sometimes I didn't have the words to explain the mess inside me. And yet, despite all that, there were moments of grace. Charlie, he was there in his own quiet way, steady and real, even when the world around us was anything but. He didn't promise me easy days, but he gave me a kind of strength I hadn't known I needed. There were nights we'd sit on that same porch where I'm talking to you now, just talking, or sometimes sitting in silence. And those moments helped me hold on when the doubts tried to pull me under. But the hardest part wasn't just the outside world or the whispers behind closed doors, it was the battle inside myself. I wrestled with fear and shame, wondering if I was good enough, if my choices made any difference. I felt the sting of regret and the weight of responsibility, knowing that what I did that night wasn't just about me anymore. It was about two lives, tangled up in ways I was only just beginning to understand. That's when the real question started taking shape in my mind. Should I keep this story locked away, hidden in the quiet corners of my heart? Or was it time to let it out, to face the truth and all the mess that came with it? The dilemma stayed with me, whispering in the dark. Is there courage in silence, or is true strength found in speaking your truth? I didn't have an answer then, and sometimes I still don't. But I know this much: life's hard, and it doesn't always hand you the endings you hope for. What matters is what you do in the face of it, how you carry the weight, and whether you find the grace to keep going. And that, my friend, is a lesson I had to learn the hard way. I remember it like the clock stopped ticking, right then and there, like the whole world held its breath just for a moment, and in that moment, everything changed. It was a late summer evening, the kind where the heat still clings to your skin, but the sky's already fading to that soft purple twilight. Charlie and I had been talking for hours, just sitting on the back porch under that old oak tree, the one that's still standing today, reminding me of what was and what could have been. We were Logan, sharing stories like we'd known each other forever, when the phone rang. I could feel my heart pounding before I even picked up the receiver. It was my ma on the other end. Her voice trembled as she said the words I never wanted to hear. Pa had been in an accident, bad enough that the doctors didn't know if he'd pull through. I tell you, right then, the world went cold, and the ground beneath me felt like it gave way. For a moment, I was paralyzed, stuck in that space between hope and despair. I remember how the evening sky seemed to darken faster, as if the sun itself was mourning. I wanted to run to her side, to do something, anything, but I was torn. Charlie needed me too. He'd been through his own battles, and now it seemed like the weight of both our worlds was crushing me. The hours that followed were a blur, a whirlwind of hospital halls, whispered prayers, and the cold beep of machines that felt like they were keeping time with my own ragged breath. I stayed by Pa's side through the night, holding his hand and willing him to fight, but the look in his eyes told a different story. There was peace there, but also a sadness that cut straight through me, like a knife. When he passed, a piece of me went with him, a foundation I hadn't realized I was standing on. That loss hit me harder than anything I'd ever known. I was 20 years old, but in that moment, I felt every year of the world's sorrow pressing down on my shoulders. It was a kind of heartbreak that words can't capture, one that sinks deep and changes how you see everything. I looked over at Charlie then, and I saw the pain mirrored in his eyes too. But there was something else, something fierce and raw. It was like the moment cracked open a door between us, exposing all the fears and truths we'd kept hidden. I remember thinking, how do you carry on when the ground falls away beneath you? When the people you love most are gone or changing before your eyes? It was a question I wrestled with long after the tears dried and the goodbyes were said. That night, I realized that life isn't about what you lose, it's about what you do with what you're left with. And in that silence, I made a choice. I chose to hold on to the memories, to the kindness my pa taught me, and to the strange, stubborn hope that no matter how dark things get, there's always a reason to keep moving forward. That moment changed me in ways I didn't understand at first. It broke me open, sure, but it also built me back up. It taught me about the fragility of life, about the weight of responsibility, and about the courage it takes to stand tall when everything inside you wants to crumble. I learned that sometimes the hardest battles aren't the ones you fight with others, but the ones you fight within yourself. And that kind of strength, quiet, steady, and true, is what carries a man through the darkest nights. Looking back now, I see how that evening shaped the rest of my story. It was the turning point, the moment where I stopped running from my fears and started facing them head on. And it was the moment that tied me and Charlie together in ways no one else could ever understand. Because sometimes, the people who come into your life in the hardest times are the ones who stay with you forever. And sometimes, the greatest loss is the beginning of something new. After that night, when the world I knew slipped through my fingers like sand, there was a stillness that settled deep inside me, a silence so heavy it felt like a part of my soul had been ripped away. The days that followed weren't filled with grand moments or loud declarations. No, they were quiet, empty, like walking through a fog that dulled everything around me. I found myself drifting, caught somewhere between what was and what could never be again. The house felt different. Rooms once full of laughter now echoed with memories that burned like old photographs. I was a different man, even if I looked the same on the outside. Living through that kind of loss changes you in ways you don't always see right away. It's not just the absence of a person, it's the absence of certainty, of the comfort you once took for granted. I'd spent so long believing in the goodness of life, in the kindness of people, in the simple promise that things would get better. But after that night, those beliefs felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter with the slightest touch. I questioned everything I'd held on to, the dreams, the faith, even myself. Sometimes, I wondered if I was strong enough to carry the weight of it all, or if I'd crumble under the strain. The loneliness was a quiet companion, following me wherever I went. I'd sit on the porch, watching the sun slip behind the pines, and feel the hollowness settle in my chest. There were moments when I felt like I was speaking to ghosts, reaching for something just beyond my grasp. I missed the sound of my pa's voice, the feel of his hand on my shoulder, the steady presence that had once been my anchor. And Charlie, well, he was gone too, disappearing into the shadows like a part of a dream I couldn't quite hold on to. It was like I was standing in a house with empty rooms, searching for a way back to the light. But even in that emptiness, something started to stir. It wasn't a loud shout or a sudden epiphany. It was a whisper, soft and persistent, reminding me that life, even when broken, still goes on. I began to see that grief wasn't just about loss. It was about learning to live with what remains. Slowly, I found pieces of myself again in the small things, the call of a bird in the morning, the way the breeze danced through the leaves, the warmth of a neighbor's smile. Those moments, quiet as they were, helped me find a foothold when everything else felt uncertain. My faith in people took a hit, sure. I was less trusting, more guarded. But I also learned that kindness doesn't always come in loud acts. It's found in the everyday gestures, the simple acts of showing up even when the world feels cold. I carried that lesson with me, like a lantern in the dark, guiding me through the long nights. I wasn't the same young man with big dreams anymore, but maybe that was all right. Maybe what mattered was not how big your dreams were, but how steady your heart could be in the face of hardship. And so, I lived. I took each day as it came, learning to carry my losses without letting them define me. The pain was still there, like a shadow that never fully leaves, but it no longer consumed me. I found peace in the quiet moments, in the spaces between the storms. I started to understand that life's beauty isn't just in the bright, shining days, but in the resilience to keep moving forward when the light feels dimmest. That's the truth I carry now, the understanding that loss changes you, but it doesn't have to break you. And though the road ahead may be uncertain, there's a quiet strength in accepting the past and letting it shape the man you are today. I may never be the man I once dreamed of, but I've learned to be grateful for the man I've become. After a long stretch of quiet and shadow, something shifted inside me, a small, almost imperceptible stirring that I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't a grand event or a sudden revelation, but more like the soft first light of dawn pushing back the night. I was sitting one afternoon on that same porch, watching the world go by, when a neighbor's child wandered over, her eyes wide with that fearless curiosity only a kid can have. She asked me about the stories I told her before, about the old days, about people she'd never met. And in that moment, just listening to her wonder and excitement, I felt a flicker of something I'd thought was gone, a reason to share, to connect, to live. That simple interaction sparked a thought. Maybe my story wasn't just mine to keep locked away. Maybe there was a purpose in telling it, a way to turn my pain and lessons into something good for someone else. It wasn't about being a hero or making a big splash in the world. It was about finding meaning in the little things, in the ways we reach out to one another. I started to realize that even the smallest gestures, a kind word, a helping hand, could carry weight far beyond what we see. Around that time, I began helping out at the local community center, just a little here and there, nothing fancy. Teaching kids to read, sharing stories from my past, lending an ear to folks who needed it. It was humbling work, and it reminded me that life is full of second chances. Sometimes we just need to open our eyes to see them. Each day I spent there, I felt a little more alive, a little more connected to the world outside my own troubles. It was a slow, steady climb back from the edge, but every step mattered. The hope that grew inside me wasn't loud or flashy, it was quiet and steady, like the soft glow of embers waiting to catch fire. I found comfort in the rhythm of everyday life, in the smiles of the children, in the trust of the people who let me in. And in turn, I gave a piece of myself back to the world, knowing that even in the darkest times, there's always a way forward. That new sense of purpose changed how I saw everything. I wasn't just a man carrying a heavy past anymore. I was a man who learned that life could surprise you, that healing was possible, and that sometimes the best thing you can do is to keep showing up for yourself, for others, for the quiet hope that tomorrow might be a little better. And so, with cautious heart but open hands, I stepped into that second chance. I began to believe again in people, in kindness, in the power of a single act to change a life. It was a beginning, humble and real, but it was mine. And sometimes, that's all you need to start living again. There comes a time in every man's life when the weight of the past either crushes you or sets you free. For me, that moment came slow, like a quiet dawn creeping over a long night. I carried those years, those memories, those secrets, as if they were chains around my soul, holding me back from breathing fully, from living freely. But one day, I looked myself in the mirror and I saw a man tired of running from what was, tired of letting regret write the story of his life. I made a choice then, a decision that wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I decided it was time to lay down the burdens I'd carried for so long. I can still see the moment clear as day. The sun was set in, casting a soft glow through the window, and I was holding an old box. Inside were keepsakes from that long ago summer, letters I'd never sent, pictures faded with time, and a worn-out pair of shoes that belonged to Charlie. For years, I'd kept that box tucked away, afraid that opening it would unleash ghosts I wasn't ready to face. But that evening, I chose to let it go. I carried that box out to the porch and set it down by the fire pit, watching the flames dance as I gently placed each item into the fire. The heat took the paper first, then the fabric, and I felt a strange kind of peace wash over me. It was more than just burning old memories. It was a symbol, a way of saying that while the past is part of me, it does not define me. The mistakes, the fears, the things I couldn't say, they were all there, but they didn't have to hold me captive anymore. I whispered a prayer under my breath, not asking for forgiveness, but for strength to live fully in the here and now. I choose to live on. No grudges, no regrets, just forward. Those words felt like a release, like the first deep breath after holding it in too long. That night marked a new chapter, a quiet revolution in my heart. I started seeing life through a different lens, one tinted with compassion for myself and others. I forgave the mistakes I thought I'd never get past. I forgave Charlie for disappearing, for the silence that had stretched between us. Most of all, I forgave myself for the times I doubted my own courage. That forgiveness wasn't a grand gesture. It was a gentle surrender, a recognition that we're all human, fragile, and deserving of grace. From that day forward, I carried myself a little lighter. I didn't need to hide behind silence or shame anymore. The story I'd kept buried was part of me, yes, but it was also a bridge connecting me to the lessons learned and the wisdom earned. It changed how I spoke to my family, how I treated the people around me, and most importantly, how I looked at myself in the mirror each morning. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but it became honest. I learned that accepting your past isn't about forgetting it. It's about making peace with it so you can step into the future without fear. And in that acceptance, I found freedom. Freedom to love more deeply, to live more fully, and to carry my story not as a weight, but as a testament to resilience and hope. I won't say I'm perfect or that every day is simple, but I can say that I chose to stop running and start living. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing a man can do. If I've learned anything from all these years and all those memories, it's that life has a way of teaching you lessons you never expected, and often in ways you're not ready for. When I look back at the young man I was, full of dreams and restless hope, and then at the man I've become, shaped by loss, love, and hard truths, I see something clearer now. The real strength isn't in grand gestures or big moments. It's in the quiet endurance, the everyday choices to keep going even when the road's rough and the future's uncertain. It's in the courage to face your own heart and keep walking forward, step by step. That night, when I saved Charlie, I thought it was just one small act, a fleeting moment that might change one life. But what I came to understand is that the ripples of even the smallest kindness can stretch far beyond what we see. Sometimes, what feels like a simple choice becomes a thread woven into the fabric of our lives and the lives of others in ways we don't realize until much later. That's a truth I carry with me. You never really know how much your actions matter, so you best choose them with care and kindness. I also learned that silence, while it can protect you, can also isolate you. I kept this story locked away for decades, thinking I was preserving peace or sparing others pain. But the truth is, holding on to secrets, burying the parts of yourself that hurt or shine, can weigh heavier than any burden you carry out loud. There's freedom in telling your story, in letting it breathe, and in trusting that your truth, however messy or imperfect, is enough. For me, finally speaking about that night, about Charlie, about the fears and hopes tied up in that moment, was like opening a window in a stuffy room. It let the fresh air in, and with it, a chance to heal. Maybe the greatest thing I realized is that we're all connected by these moments of vulnerability and courage. We all carry unseen battles, secret hopes, and the need to be understood and accepted. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to reach out, to share your story, or simply to listen to someone else's. That connection, that human touch, is what makes us whole. So, if there's one thing I want to leave with you, it's this. Don't wait for the perfect time to be brave, to speak up, or to show kindness. Life doesn't wait, and neither should you. Sometimes the smallest step, helping a neighbor, reaching out to a friend, telling your story, can change the course of your life and someone else's too. Maybe it's time for you to stop waiting for the right moment and start living your truth right now. I won't pretend it's easy. It takes guts to face your past, to carry your scars without shame, and to open your heart again after it's been broken. but I promise you, it's worth it. The journey through pain and loss can lead to a kind of wisdom and peace that only comes from surviving and growing. And that, my friend, is a kind of victory all on its own. So, as I sit here reflecting on all these years, I see the story not just as mine, but as part of a bigger picture, a reminder that every life is touched by the kindness we give and receive, and that no act of love, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Maybe, just maybe, that's the truth we all need to hold on to. As I sit here, sharing these memories with you, I can't help but feel a deep kind of gratitude for the chance to tell this story, for the moments that shaped me, and for you, sitting there listening with an open heart. This ain't just a tale from long ago, no sir. It's a living part of me, as much today as it was back then. You see, life doesn't just happen in the past. It's a river flowing through time, carrying us along with every choice we make, every step we take. There's a quiet beauty in knowing that the stories we hold inside about love, loss, courage, and hope are threads that connect us all, no matter where we come from or how many years have passed. I hope that by sharing mine, you might see a little of your own journey reflected back, and maybe find some comfort in knowing that you're not alone. Because every heart has its own struggles, its own moments that define who we are. And sometimes, just sometimes, those moments come full circle in ways we never expect. I want to leave you with a question that's been with me for a long time, one that still stirs my soul when the night is quiet and the world fades away. Tell me, what do you think? Is true love meant to come back around? Is it possible that the people who touch our lives most deeply find a way back to us, even after years apart, even after silence and distance? I like to believe they do. I like to think that the ties that bind us are stronger than time or circumstance. Sometimes, when the wind rustles through the trees just right, or when a familiar song drifts through the air, I swear I can feel her presence, Charlie's, that friend, that spirit who saved me in ways I'm still trying to understand. Sometimes, it feels like she remembers, even when I forget. Life isn't about tidy endings or clear answers. It's about the moments in between, the memories that warm us, the love that lingers, and a hope that keeps us going when the path ahead looks uncertain. My story is but one among many, but it's a reminder that our lives are shaped by the kindness we give, the courage we summon, and the connections we hold dear. So, as you carry this story with you, think about the people in your life, the friends, the family, the strangers who've made a mark on your heart. Maybe reach out to them, share your own stories, or simply hold them a little closer. Because in the end, it's those bonds that make this journey worthwhile. Thank you for listening, for sharing a moment of your time with an old man's memories. And remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can echo through a lifetime. So, what about you? What's the story you're holding inside, just waiting to be told? I'd love to hear it someday.